Hello. There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. So I lead all our startup and investor engagement, including our startup program for Google Cloud for all of Europe. So effectively, the benefit it has provided me has been to have a front row seat to people that are building literally what's next. It's also been a front row seat to all the hype, hysteria, and confusion. Where's the clicker? Got it. So with that confusion, obviously, these words get thrown around interchangeably every day, but we all know that they all have their own level of significance. But through that process, we've been able to also see some observations around exactly what does each one mean and how are they being impacted and changed. So through that kind of journey of trying to understand all the components, sometimes it can be lost upon us, the fact that, ultimately, what are we trying to solve should be the first fundamental question we should be asking. Quite often I see a lot of, especially AI startups, that will just jump into AI washing solutions and let's build ensemble models and deep learning, and they still haven't figured out, what are we trying to solve for? And that's a very fundamental thing. And I know it sounds very basic, but you'd be surprised, or maybe not, about how many people forget about that very basic element. And then from there, it really then kind of moves on to around, not just what are we trying to solve, but do I even need a model? Because the reality is that, all things being equal, studies have shown that, if you have a large data set, large population, that will trump, say, just clever algorithms. Don't get me wrong, algorithms have their place. But at the end of the day, we still know that rubbish in, rubbish out. So that has also led to kind of, in a very fundamental and rudimentary standpoint, that as teams are building AI-centric companies and products, they need to also be comfortable of the glory is not going to be one, certainly from just trumping the, hey, we're building AI and ML. It's that you have to be comfortable with data and all that process of the cleaning of it and what that means, because that's where you're going to spend most of your time. So now that we have that idea of where and how we're going to be spending our time, I think it'd be good to talk about some use cases. So how many of you out there love math? There we go. Of course you do. That's why you're here. But so obviously, we want to take a lot of data and we want to use some clever maths to try and build some wonderful things and try and solve some problems. So at a very basic level, when you put it into practice, it looks like this, right? Get a lot of data, make sure you're labeling it, and eventually you get an output. But what if you're trying to do something that's more complex? What if you're trying to figure out, is this a dog? Is it a mop? What is it? What am I looking at? And this is where you start to see a lot of things like general purpose machine learning APIs. So in this instance, a vision API, where you can try and solve some of that stuff. But also, it has meant that it's ushered in this new era where people are ultimately using general purpose APIs as a platform. And there's a wonderful book talking about platforms as a business by Jeffrey Parker, Platform Revolution. But ultimately, it is talking, you are talking about layering in on top your magic sauce, what you guys do well, and then trying to enhance and create that wonderful experience for your users and customers. And then from there, obviously, you see a lot of AI startups that are trying to solve a lot of these different things. And not just startups. Of course, there are large enterprises doing it as well. Obviously, with the most recent phone, with face detection, to then a lot of companies that are trying to help people understand things about their brand, their products. So logo recognition and natural language APIs. What are people saying out there in the ether about your products? And that has been great because it's been amazing for a lot of companies to all of a sudden be born and leveraging the power of machine learning. Now, what if you wanted to do something that was more, let's say, for fun or research-based? So video is not playing, so you'll have to take my word for it that what this is actually that it was a summer project for one of our developer advocates with one of his children that for $200 of hardware and using TensorFlow, they wanted to build a rock, paper, scissors machine. And when you actually look at what was underneath the hood, if you will, this is a nice visualization of what was happening. And ultimately, it's kind of interesting and fun to read the blog post that ultimately is talking about how they eventually went through that journey to get to probabilities. But what if you wanted to do something that was maybe larger from a societal impact standpoint? And there's loads of examples that exist out there. This is just one of many. And this is what you're looking at is a representation from the Global Fishing Watch organization. So this is them using AI to effectively track vessels, ships around the world, and using satellite imagery data and various other data points to be able to tell whether people were fishing or not, and then being able to also reduce time to notify authorities and to help prevent against exploitation and overfishing. And this is just, again, one of many examples, but it's a fun one from a visual standpoint. And as far as today, this was merely just a glimpse of some observations of things that see every day that people are building. And it's still, I would be remiss if I didn't say that it's still about the fundamentals, about the data, and still making sure that you're trying to solve a problem. And those are really the core of AI in business today. And you see a lot of startups that are helping to shape that going forward. And it's a lot of fun to watch. So thanks for being here and listening. Anyone that wants TensorFlow stickers, you can find me later. And talk to you later. Bye.